Good evening, you are watching News in English. I'm Sona Tumanyan. So how did the political week unfold? We begin with a brief snapshot of the November geopolitical landscape. Yerevan-Baku dialogue wrap up. What did Armenia gain from the talks? No plans to withdraw from CSTO yet. Why Armenia skipped the Bishkek summit? Major gathering for public sector representatives. Attendance reaches 7,000. Authorities dismantle another illegal call center, marking fourth crackdown this year. U.S. envoy Witkoff to visit Moscow. What resolution is expected for Russia-Ukraine relations? Arman Tsarukyan's stunning UFC victory. Hooker defeated via chokehold. A rare two-day dialogue between Armenian and Azerbaijani civil society representatives in Baku has concluded with potential signs of movement on one of the conflict's most volatile issues. Speaking at a press conference in Yerevan upon their return, members of the Armenian delegation revealed they held high-level discussions with Hikmet Hajiev, the foreign policy AD to Azerbaijan's president. According to the delegate, Hajiev used the meeting to deliver a key message to Yerevan, signaling that an active negotiation process regarding the return of prisoners of war is currently underway. The fate of detainees remains a major sticking point in the fragile peace process between the two South Caucasus adversaries. During the summit, delegations from both sides reportedly broke down the barriers hindering the normalization of relations. The groups emphasized the critical need to abandon provocative rhetoric in an effort to build a climate of trust.
Armenian experts returning from Baku report that, just like their Azerbaijani colleagues in Yerevan, they felt safe in Baku. A key part of the visit was the meeting with the assistant to the president of Azerbaijan, Hikmet Hajiev, who sent a clear message to the Armenian public.
A few messages that the president's assistant asked us to convey to Armenian society during our meeting. The war is over. For Azerbaijan, there is no war. The conflict is over for them. They want to build peace from this non-war state. Azerbaijan has no territorial claims against Armenia.
However, the path to reconciliation is full of obstacles. Experts admit that decades of accumulated mistrust and insult will not disappear in a day.
When Azerbaijani experts and civil society representatives were in Armenia, we saw their past speeches, past addresses, and past actions being dug up. I want to say that the same happened to us in Azerbaijan, meaning our wartime statements and actions were circulating on Telegram channels. Are we going to build peace with them? This is a natural phenomenon.
The incident Kochanyan recalled concerns a woman who came here during the Yerevan visit, who participated in the blockade of Artsakh as an activist, and this raised a big clamor. ReOpen asked one of the Azerbaijanis who came to Armenia about that.
First, let us state that the Azerbaijani side did not interfere in any way with the delegation arriving from Armenia, and at the same time, the Armenian side did not interfere with the composition of the delegation arriving from Azerbaijan. Ms. Dilara has been a participant in the Armenia-Azerbaijan dialogue platforms for decades. She is an active representative of civil society and a person with very extensive experience in that direction. She played an active role in the reintegration process of the Armenians of Karabakh.
They also discussed the issue of Armenian prisoners of war, POWs, with Hajiev, but visiting them was not a priority for the delegation. According to Naira Sultanian, there were no restrictions on raising this issue. They will continue to speak about this in international structures as well.
Speaking about this with the Azerbaijani side was a new situation. We tried to formulate the speech diplomatically, justify it delicately, so that as a result, a sense of trust and mutual perception would arise, as a result of which we hope these problems will be solved. We did not receive a clear answer regarding names or numbers. Hajiev assured us that an active negotiation process is underway.
Armenian and Azerbaijani experts in Baku also discussed sensitive issues at the public level, such as the issue of place names, toponyms.
The issue of neutralizing irritant factors, the use of vocabulary with provocative, problematic rhetoric, the issue of place names, paying attention to the issue of rhetoric.
Despite the difficulties, the experts believe that the dialogue has entered a new, more constructive phase.
If during the Yerevan meeting we were convinced that we understand each other, then during the Baku meeting we found out that what we say reaches the intended target. There are issues where the response is obvious, positive. There are issues that are in process. There are issues where we do not reach an agreement. That is natural in a matter like Armenian-Azerbaijani relations.
The agenda of the visit included meetings of both a practical and a cultural/symbolic nature. The delegation visited the St. Gregory the Illuminator Church in Baku, where the tour was conducted in Armenian, and also had a short, unplanned conversation with Baku residents who greeted them in Armenian. By the way, parallel to political processes, a video went viral on the internet over the weekend. In the final of the Silkway Star Music project held in Kazakhstan, jury member representing Azerbaijan, Samira Efendi, awarded the maximum 12 points to Armenia's representative, Saro Gevorgyan.
I want there to be peace in the whole world. That is why I give Armenia 12 points as a sign of peace.
The scoring was followed by a warm embrace between the two artists, which was welcomed on social media as a symbol of the unifying power of art and cultural dialogue. Anna Haratunyan, ReOpen Media.
Armenian Parliament Speaker Alen Simonyan met with Luis Grasa, the Vice President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, on Sunday to discuss regional security and the ongoing peace process with Azerbaijan. During the meeting, Simonyan raised the urgent issue of Armenian prisoners of war and other detainees currently held in Azerbaijan, as well as those still considered missing. According to a statement from the National Assembly, the two officials also discussed the strengthening ties between Armenia and the European Union. Grasa, who also serves as the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly Special Representative for the South Caucasus, praised the democratic reforms currently underway in Armenia. He assured Simonyan that the organization would continue to support the country's democratic progress. By the way, Alen Simonyan once again addressed the issue of prisoners during a recent briefing. The National Assembly Speaker recalled that while the number of prisoners once reached nearly 200, there are now 23 confirmed cases. He expressed confidence that this number will eventually drop to zero, ensuring the return of everyone, including the former leaders of Karabakh and all other detainees. Simonyan stated that his optimism is based on experience rather than just current discussions, pointing to the significant decrease in prisoners since the war as proof. He emphasized that the government is doing everything possible to bring every captive back to Armenia. A delegation led by Tatas Korlayton, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Romanian Senate, held a series of meetings with top Armenian officials in Yerevan this week, focusing on bilateral ties and the South Caucasus security landscape. On November 24, Parliament Speaker Alen Simonyan hosted the delegation to discuss the development of Armenia-Romania inter-parliamentary connections and Armenia's deepening relationship with the European Union. Addressing the broader peace process with Azerbaijan, Simonyan drew the Romanian officials' urgent attention to the humanitarian crisis of detainees, specifically highlighting the plight of Armenian prisoners of war and missing persons currently held in Azerbaijan. In a separate session the same day, Deputy Parliament Speaker Ruben met with Korlayton, emphasizing that Armenia values the deepening of cooperation with Romania based on the centuries-old friendship between the two peoples. Ruben briefed the delegation on Yerevan's concrete steps towards cementing regional peace, with a specific focus on the ongoing normalization process between Armenia and Turkey. And the diplomatic engagement continued on November 24 as Security Council Secretary Armen Grigoryan welcomed the delegation. Grigoryan underscored the importance of reciprocal visits and the need to expand multi-sector cooperation. The officials exchanged views on establishing lasting peace in the South Caucasus and discussed the implementation of Armenia's Trump Strip initiative. Armenia did not attend the Collective Security Treaty Organization Summit held in Bishkek on November 27. Kremlin AD Yuri Ushakov has confirmed. Despite the absence, Ushakov indicated that representatives from Yerevan do not object to the documents adopted by the other member states during the gathering. Among the key decisions approved is the transfer of the Security Bloc's chairmanship to Russia, which is set to take effect on January 1, 2026. By the way, Parliament Speaker Alain Simonian has dismissed suggestions that withdrawing from the CSTO equates to an anti-Russian stance. Speaking to reporters, he argued that leaving an organization that fails to fulfill its obligation is a logical step, not an ideological one. When passed on why Armenia has not yet officially quit the alliance, Simonian declared that the country has already effectively left the bloc. He added that the timing of a formal withdrawal remains a matter of political expediency.
In a conversation with journalists at the National Assembly, Deputy Foreign Minister Natsikhan Safarian addressed the issue of whether or not Armenia will withdraw from the CSTO, stating that such a question is not on the Foreign Ministry's agenda. Safarian added that the format of participation regarding the CSTO has been announced. Armenia is not participating in CSTO summits, but it does not obstruct the adoption of decisions and documents.
At this stage, this is our policy. Armenia conducts its foreign policy based on its own interests and the unfolding situation. Announcements have been made regarding Armenia's policy of both diversification and balancing. Armenia makes decisions, and if there is additional information, we will inform you.
Meanwhile, the Speaker of the National Assembly, responding to a clarifying question from journalists, stated that we have effectively withdrawn from the CSTO. Yuri Ushakov, aide to the President of Russia, stated that Armenia will not participate in the CSTO summit to be held in Bishkek on November 27th. According to him, representatives of our country do not oppose the adoption of documents agreed upon during the meeting. The summit plans to transfer the chairmanship of the organization to Russia, which will effectively take place starting January 1st, 2026. Back in February 2024, it became known that Yerevan had frozen its participation in the CSTO. In March of the same year, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan did not rule out that Armenia might withdraw from the Collective Security Treaty Organization if the CSTO did not answer a question raised by Armenia.
What is the CSTO's area of responsibility in Armenia?
The CSTO replied that it considers the country's sovereign territory to be its area of responsibility in Armenia. Following this, the Foreign Ministry announced that Armenia would not participate in financing its share of the CSTO budget.
Armenia will refrain from joining the November 23, 2023 decision of the CSTO Collective Security Council on the 2024 budget of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Armenia will also not participate in the financing of the activities envisioned by it, while at the same time not objecting to the adoption of said decision in a limited format.
On June 14th of last year, Pashinyan stated in the National Assembly that the next step would be withdrawal from the CSTO, and later emphasized that Armenia is close to the point of no return in its relations with the CSTO. According to him, the organization has even created threats to the country's sovereignty. The Kremlin responded to Pashinyan's statement. Dmitry Peskov, the press secretary for the Russian president, emphasized that no danger emanates from the CSTO. On the contrary, the organization is designed to protect the sovereignty and security of its member states. Mary Danielian, ReOpen Media.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has contrasted deepening concerns over the political situation in Georgia with optimism regarding the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, attributing recent progress in part to Donald Trump. While admitting the alliance has no illusions about the current trajectory in Tbilisi, Rutte urged observers to view the South Caucasus region holistically. Alongside Georgia, we see what is happening between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Rutte said. Here it seems the situation is much better, including thanks to President Trump. Following its absence from the recent Collective Security Treaty Organization gathering, Armenia is set to engage in high-level talks with the European Union. Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan will lead a delegation to Brussels for a 3-day working visit beginning December 1st to participate in the 6th meeting of the Armenia-EU Partnership Council. The delegation includes deputy ministers representing various government agencies. According to a decree signed by the Prime Minister, Mirzoyan is required to submit a formal report on the results of the meetings within 5 days of the delegation's return to Yerevan. By the way, delegation led by the Speaker of Armenia's National Assembly is set to travel to Athens for an official visit from November 30 to December 2. Haik Gonjorian, the leader of the ruling civil contract faction, will also be participating in his capacity as the head of the Armenia-Greece Parliamentary Friendship Group. And now, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan convened a massive gathering of public sector representatives at the Sports and Concert Complex in Yerevan, outlining a long-term strategy centered on education and institutional reform. The unprecedented conference brought together approximately 7,000 attendees, including school principals, regional governors, and heads of state-run organizations. In his address, Pashinyan declared human capital to be the state's highest value. He argued that education must be placed at the core of all national strategies, asserting that a well-educated citizenry is the prerequisite for creating the added value necessary to drive economic development. The Prime Minister also offered a critical assessment of the current state apparatus. He noted a serious problem regarding creative thinking within the public sector and acknowledged that government positions are often not competitive compared to the private sector. To address these challenges, Pashinyan announced plans to introduce new mechanisms for personal development and professional training, emphasizing that the government must adopt a strategic vision spanning decades rather than years.
The first conference of representatives of state bodies took place at the Sports and Concert Complex under the leadership of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. School principals, heads of state non-commercial organizations, SNCOs, regional governors, and civil contract members, around 7,000 people in total. This is the first gathering of such scale.
Պետական մարմինների ներկայացուցիչների այս համաժողովը առաջինն է Հայաստանի պատմության մեջ.
This conference of representatives of state bodies is the first in the history of Armenia. The conference itself is an expression of the reevaluation of the role and significance of the state, the Republic of Armenia, an event aimed at emphasizing not only the importance, but also the vitality of the state for our people.
The opposition does not agree with the characterization of the conference. MP Artur Khachaturian believes that such large-scale gatherings were held by Stalin, Hitler, and other dictators.
This is overt and absolute autocracy. And with that, this was a pathetic message plea to Aliyev. Help me win the elections and I will change the constitution and do whatever you wish.
The ideology by which state bodies work is important, but those gathered are also interested in remuneration. When will the salaries of those working in state bodies be raised? The Prime Minister presents essentially the bonus system.
We summarized the results with the participation of the deputy prime ministers and myself, and we evaluate them. And based on that evaluation, it has an impact on the remuneration system.
Not only are we living in the best period of the last 500 years, but also in the most promising period of the next 500 years. These are Pashinyan's thoughts. According to him, Armenia must transition from a survival mode to a strategy of centuries-long development. According to Pashinyan, the pillars of security and progress are external and internal legitimacy, internationally recognized borders, and a new constitution. In short, the topics and approaches of the conference were drawn from the Fourth Republic concept previously published by Civil Contract.
This
is precisely why it is important that the referendum on adopting the new constitution takes place after the 2026 parliamentary elections. That is an opportunity for all forces to first share their say and approaches regarding the constitution agenda with the people during the parliamentary election campaign, and then the position of the political majority that receives the vote of confidence from the people as a result of the elections will be decisive in the formation of the final draft of the Constitution.
Simon Hovhannisyan, ReOpen Media.
Turning to another important platform, we highlight the address delivered by Armenia's permanent representative at the United Nations. Speaking at a high-level meeting regarding the global plan of action to combat trafficking in persons, Ambassador Parvit Hovhannisyan warned that despite past achievements, emerging forms of trafficking demand sustained and coordinated global action. Hovhannisyan reaffirmed Armenia's commitment to eradicating the practice, pointed to domestic reforms and ongoing cooperation with international monitoring bodies, including the Council of Europe's group of experts. And shifting our focus from politics to law enforcement and the protection of rights, we turn to a report on recent operation by the criminal police. Authorities have dismantled another illegal call center, marking the fourth such crackdown this year. Operating as part of a larger network, the group was involved in financial extortion, targeting individuals in foreign countries. Law enforcement officials also noted that reciprocal threats exist, warning that similar cyber fraud rings operating abroad are actively targeting Armenian citizens.
The operations of the fourth alleged criminal call center this year have been halted, the Ministry of Internal Affairs reports. Officers from the police and the investigative committee conducted a search of the criminal call center on November 20th.
We established that a group of individuals, by prior agreement, rented office space in a commercial building in Arab Kur Administrative District, equipped it as a criminal call center, and are committing computer-related theft in particularly large amounts.
The agency asserts that similar apparent criminal organizations operating in Armenia are interconnected with other structures utilizing the same mechanism in other countries, which in turn target citizens of our republic.
As a result of large-scale operative intelligence measures, law enforcement bodies succeeded in determining the identities of the individuals involved in the criminal organization, the specific role assigned to each, data on the fake platforms they used on the internet, and information regarding the crypto asset wallets used for the criminally obtained financial funds.
Media experts say that today, fraudsters contact people in many different ways. These are mainly social networks, but scams involving phone calls are now increasingly on the rise.
Fraudsters mainly use major services or state and public services, that is, they present themselves on their behalf. Banks, delivery services, for example, High Post, insurance companies, mobile operators, internet operators, essentially the services that people are, so to speak, immersed in during their daily lives, and that is where they try to infiltrate.
But how do you know if you are dealing with fraudsters? You need to know a few simple rules. If they ask for your personal data, passwords, card or bank account numbers, or ask you to perform certain actions on your phone or computer, then you have been targeted by fraudsters.
Now, if there is such a call or message, it's very simple here. If a person feels even the slightest doubt, or, as I said, they're asking for something excessive or unusual, or the person doesn't quite understand what is being asked of them, the best thing to do is hang up and call back. Contact the service or company that was supposedly speaking to you. In that case, you will be contacting the real entity and can verify if they called you, what the issue was, and so on. If you have already done something wrong, the step is the same. First, contact the company on whose behalf they spoke to you, and then, if it is a serious matter, the law enforcement bodies.
According to the media expert, it is not only the elderly and those less familiar with modern technologies who are in the fraudsters' sites. They try to target everyone by periodically updating their fraudulent, cunning, and multi-step scenarios.
The protection of human rights remains at the forefront of the Armenian agenda. On November 25, human rights defender Anahit Manasyan marked the start of the annual 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. This year's initiative operates under the theme Uniting Efforts for a Safe Digital Environment, underscoring digital security as a critical component of modern rights protection. In her address, Manasyan warned that various forms of gender-based violence, including psychological, economic, and sexual abuse remain widespread in Armenia. She emphasized that the issue extends far beyond physical aggression, noting that the public often fails to recognize these other forms of abuse, which hinders effective prevention. The Ombudsman highlighted the necessity of human rights education to overcome deep-seated stereotypes and foster equality. The conference, organized by the UN agencies, UNDP, UNICEF, UNFPA, with support from the European Union, also featured remarks from high-level officials, including EU Ambassador Vasilis Maragos and Minister of Internal Affairs Arpine Sargsyan. In an earlier engagement, human rights defender Anahit Manasyan hosted a delegation led by Luis Grassa, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly Special Representative for the South Caucasus. During the meeting, Manasyan briefed the officials workshops on Armenia's domestic human rights landscape, addressing challenges such as hate speech, discrimination, and standards regarding pre-trial detention. The Ombudsman also placed special emphasis on the protection of rights for forcibly displaced persons from Nagorno-Karabakh. A significant portion of the dialogue focused on the plight of Armenians currently detained in Azerbaijan. Manasyan raised serious concerns regarding the legal processes involving these detainees, describing them as problematic from a human rights perspective. The meeting concluded with both sides exploring avenues to expand cooperation on monitoring and promoting fundamental rights in the region. And crossing the Atlantic in keeping with tradition, we turn to the latest engagement by Armenia's diplomatic representative in the United States. On November 25, Armenia's ambassador to the U.S., Narek Mkrtchyan, met with Gary Phillips, president of the board of the Armenian Missionary Association of America. According to an embassy statement, the ambassador expressed gratitude for the organization's long-standing humanitarian, educational, and community programs implemented across Armenia. The discussion also focused on identifying opportunities for future cooperation. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's diplomatic engagement with Beijing continues. Donald Trump announced he held a very good phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping, covering topics ranging from the Russia-Ukraine conflict to the flow of fentanyl. Writing on Truth Social, Trump hailed a significant deal for American farmers and described bilateral relations as extremely strong. According to the post, the two leaders agreed to maintain regular contact, with Trump extending an invitation for President Xi to visit the United States in the near future. And while President Donald Trump meets with New York's newly elected mayor, potential adversaries are already lining up for the next election cycle. The Democratic Party has begun its search for a leader to headline the 2028 presidential ticket. According to a report by Fox News, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is emerging as a top contender for the nomination. The 36-year-old New York lawmaker, a prominent figure in the party's progressive wing, made history in 2018 as the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. The field of potential candidates also includes California Governor Gavin Newsom and former Vice President Kamala Harris, following her defeat against Trump in the 2024 election. The peacekeeper U.S. president is now taking on the role of godfather in the settlement of Russian-Ukrainian relations. Donald Trump claims his team has made serious progress toward ending the war, refining a U.S. proposal down to a 22-point plan. In a major development, Trump announced that his special envoy Steve Witkoff is set to travel to Moscow next week to meet directly with President Vladimir Putin to resolve remaining disagreements. Concurrently, military Representative Dan Driscoll will engage with Ukrainian officials. While noting that no deadline has been set, Trump indicated that Kyiv faces a stark choice between further territorial losses and immediate peace, asserting that Moscow is effectively making a concession by agreeing to hold operations. He added that European nations would be heavily involved in establishing security guarantees. Adding to the regional intrigue, Western media reports suggest Azerbaijan may be covertly supplying military aircraft to Kyiv. According to the Daily Express, Baku is allegedly transferring Su-22 fighter jets to Ukraine via a complex route involving Turkey, Sudan, and Germany. While the veracity of the report remains unconfirmed, such a move would mark a significant shift, likely aggravating Azerbaijan's already complex relationship with Russia.
The situation on and around the Ukrainian front continues to escalate, accompanied by intensifying diplomatic activity and fresh statements. The southeastern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia was subjected to a massive drone attack by Russian forces, resulting in damage to residential buildings and civilian infrastructure. The attack occurred as the Russian Ministry of Defense announced troop advancements in various directions along the front, specifically in the Pokrovsk region, and claimed control of the village of Zatishia.
There was a proposal from the Americans, which we consider quite acceptable. That is all.
At the same time, tensions are rising near NATO's borders. A Russian drone penetrated deep into Romanian territory, setting a record for depth, forcing Romanian and German fighter jets to scramble. This marks the 13th such incident.
We are dealing with a new incursion by a Russian drone, a new provocation by Russia against Romania. A drone that the Romanian army and German pilots attempted to intercept.
The negotiation process is proceeding amidst information tension. The Kremlin denied discussions of a peace plan in Abu Dhabi, confirming only contacts regarding prisoner exchanges, and labeled press leaks as attempts to hinder the process. In Bishkek, during a conversation with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, Vladimir Putin presented the progress of negotiations on the Ukraine issue.
I will be glad to inform you about the direction of achieving results acceptable and desirable for us via peaceful means in Ukraine. I know that you follow this and are always concerned about it. You are one of those people who strive for the end of this conflict.
Zelensky expressed readiness to discuss the plan proposed by the U.S. on the condition that Europe also participates in the negotiations. Wary of Trump's coercion regarding territorial concessions, he called on allies to deploy deterrence forces in Ukraine and continue support until Russia is ready for real peace.
We are firmly convinced that security decisions concerning Ukraine must include Ukraine. That was our position in Geneva. And always, security decisions concerning Europe must include Europe. And the same applies to Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, other countries, and every nation. This is fair and it really works, because when something is decided behind a country's or its people's back, there's always a high risk that it simply won't work.
Levers of financial and political pressure have also been put into action. Great Britain and France are working with the EU to use frozen Russian assets to support Kyiv, while London promises new missiles. These multilateral efforts, combined with the UN's call to respect territorial integrity, show that despite Russian pressure on the front and fluctuating signals coming from the US, Europe is attempting to prevent Ukraine's capitulation and achieve sustainable peace. David Genjoyan, ReOpen Media.
In a major diplomatic victory, Armenia has been elected to the UNESCO World Heritage Committee for the first time in its history, the Foreign Ministry reports. Armenia achieved the best result during the balloting for open seats, securing an impressive 105 out of 161 possible votes. Officials stated that this landslide support reflects the high level of trust the international community places in Armenia's long-standing commitment to the preservation of cultural heritage. Azerbaijan was also elected to the committee despite its government's controversial record of destroying or claiming the cultural heritage of other nations. And Armenia secures another major win in the world of innovation. The Tuma Center for Creative Technologies has been crowned the winner of the prestigious WISE Prize in Doha, taking top honors ahead of competitors from Jordan and the United States. Held under the theme Humanity I/O, the global summit celebrates breakthroughs in education. Tuma impressed the jury with its cutting-edge AI co-learners platform, a new tool designed to empower students to actively compete and collaborate with artificial intelligence. And finally, we wrap up with perhaps the most spectacular victory of the week, this time in the octagon. Arman Tsarukyan has delivered a stunning performance in the main event of UFC Fight Night 265 in Doha, defeating New Zealander Dan Hooker via submission with a chokehold. The dominant win officially makes Tsarukyan the top contender for the championship title. The victory has sent waves of euphoria through Armenia, with fans celebrating nationwide as the global sports community continues to buzz about the performance.
Armenian master of mixed martial arts Arman Tsarukyan returned to the UFC octagon after a year and a half away and took down New Zealander Dan Hooker. In a fight that captured the attention of millions of martial arts fans, on Saturday at midnight, Tsarukyan secured his dominance over his opponent with a chokehold at the end of the second round. The 29-year-old Tsarukyan has 23 wins and 3 losses in the octagon, while the 35-year-old Hooker has 24 wins and 13 losses. Tsarukyan's victory sparked a wave of great excitement among Armenians worldwide. Chants by Armenians echoed through the streets of Doha, spreading across the Qatari capital. Armenian masters of classical martial arts, members of the Armenian national wrestling team, had also traveled to the Arab Emirate to support their compatriot. For his victory, the #1 ranked UFC lightweight contender Arman Tsarukyan received $350,000 in prize money from the UFC, plus a $50,000 bonus. Tsarukyan also received a gift from his friend, UFC middleweight champion Chechen fighter Hamza Chimaev, a wristwatch worth $150,000. It might have seemed that Tsarukyan was tense when entering the octagon, but according to sports commentator Meher Sargsyan, there was no tension in his gaze.
He probably realized halfway through the first round that he needed to continue with a different style. Arman has mastered many styles, both in the standing position and on the ground, grappling. He fights excellently. It doesn't matter if he's grappling or striking, he feels very comfortable regardless. But there was the other side of the coin here, because Hooker was 12 centimeters taller than Arman, and in mixed martial arts, that is definitely a big difference. I can confidently say that if Arman had continued standing, he would have inevitably taken hits until the last round.
Sargsyan also highlights the coaching factor. According to him, Tsarukyan is now training under a stricter regime.
Taking into account the facts that he has recently been training with Hamza Chimaev as well, I can confidently say that the weight difference plays a very significant role during training sessions. If we take Arman's weight and compare it to Chimaev's weight, the difference is huge.
Now a fight with Ilia Topuria awaits Arman. In the commentator's opinion, comparing Topuria to other athletes would not be accurate.
Ilia Topuria is a fantastic striker. Ilia Topuria can never be compared to either Dan Hooker or Oliveira. Up to this point, Arman hasn't encountered a crazy, fantastic striker about whom we could say, you know what, this athlete can be compared to Topuria, or find some parallels. Arman has excellent potential. Today, Arman has a very good opportunity to fight for the championship belt.
After the Doha fight, there was a flood of praise for Tsarukyan in specialized magazines and websites. UFC.com wrote that Arman stifled Hooker's momentum in the very first round and secured one of the best victories of his career. MMA Junkie emphasized that the UFC has no choice but to organize the Tsarukyan-Topuria fight. Sports Illustrated stated that Tsarukyan broke Hooker's will in the second round and declared, "I am the only #1 contender." Ani Hovanesyan, ReOpen Media.
This much for today. I'm Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with ReNews. Good night.